Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Emma Monska, and you can find our Ravelry group by searching Stitched in Sweden, and the show notes for this episode as well as back episodes are available at stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com. Thank you so much for watching today. If you are a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back, and welcome to any new viewers. It has been really great to hear from you all this week, whether that's been a message on Ravelry or Instagram or just a YouTube subscription or anything. It's really nice to hear from you, and I always get excited to hear from more people. I was a little bit slow in responding to messages this week because I have spent the weekend in a very small town in western Sweden called Kil, and I was there for the Fårfesten, which means the sheep festival. So I will talk about that a little bit in This Week in Sweden. This week it's This Week in Sweden instead of Stockholm. But I also just wanted to say thank you to those of you who have purchased my pattern Little Hearts, which is available on Ravelry, and to those of you who have just left really nice comments about that as well. It was really sweet. I have also just been watching a new podcast this week. Kemper from Junk Yarn is on her 3rd episode. I watched it this morning, and she just said some really nice things about my podcast on episode 2, so I just wanted to say hello to Kemper, and I really enjoy watching your podcast. Alright, so before I go too much further, I just wanted to let you know what I'm wearing this week. I am wearing my Ades, or Ade, which is French for help, I think. So I don't think you say it Ades because you don't pronounce the Z in French. But I don't have a very good French accent, despite taking 4.5 years of French in school. Anyway, I am wearing the Ades, or Ade, cardigan by Cerelia Rose, and I knit this. This is the first sweater that I knit in Sweden, actually. My mom gifted me this yarn right before I left and moved to Stockholm. So it was in December of 2013, and we were on our kind of last trip to Fancy Tiger Crafts, which is a yarn store and actually just all sorts of crafts store in Denver, Colorado. And I picked this yarn out and she got it for me. So this is Quince & Company Lark, which is their worsted weight plied yarn in the River colorway. And this has a nice cable details both on the sleeves, on the front, and then I'm sure you all know this pattern, but there are also nice cables on the back of the sweater. I modified this pattern also because it is originally written for a bulky weight yarn. So I didn't have bulky weight. I don't really know that I would particularly enjoy a bulky weight sweater. Even worsted weight is a little bit thicker than I would usually knit, I think. But I really like how this sweater came out. I'm really pleased with the modifications I was able to make. So basically I was aiming for, I think she has size small and size extra small, somewhere around like 33 to 34 inch bust, and that's the upper bust measurement, which is what I always use for sweaters. And I knit the size medium in order to achieve the small, between small and extra small. So I didn't really swatch for it, but I don't recommend, but sometimes you just don't want to swatch. Maybe you should swatch if you're totally changing the yarn weight for a sweater. But basically what I did is, because this sweater is worked in pieces, I just started with the sleeve. And I knit a bit on the sleeve, wrapped it around my arm, just kind of thought, okay, is this a good fabric? Do I like how it's coming out? And it was good, so I just kind of winged it from there, which, yeah, lucky. Anyway, so that is what I'm wearing. I'm sorry if I sound a little funny, but I have been sick in the past week, but I'm almost better, so. But, let's see, so this week in Sweden, I went to Forfest in Kiel, Sweden, which is about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive from Stockholm. So first I took the train to meet up with 3 other knitters from my Stockholm Night Knitters group, and we drove there together. We got there on Saturday morning, right around when the festival started at 10, and spent the day there. We stayed with one of the girls' families for the evening who lives nearby, and then the next morning we went just back through, again quickly through the festival, and then drove back to Stockholm last night, or yesterday afternoon. So there was lots of knitting to be done, lots of looking at different yarns and wool, and there weren't any sheep. Well, there was like 3 or 4 sheep. I thought that there was going to be more sheep because it's called the Sheep Festival. But I guess that it's Sheep Festival in that it's all sheep products. So there was a bit of yarn, not as much as I expected, but there was some yarn. There was also a lot of sheepskin rugs, and it's common here to have a sheepskin for a rug or on the back of a chair or in a baby stroller, things like that. So there was a lot of sheepskins, a lot of slippers from sheepskins, and other products like that. There was some sheep cheese, which I tried some. It was really strong, and I like strong cheese, but this was like, yeah, really strong. And there was also some sheep meat, which I always think is kind of interesting when, like, I guess it's the whole process, but using everything. But sometimes it's weird when you have, like, these pictures of, like, these really cute sheep and their wool and everything, and then right next door is, like, and here's the sausage, or here's the steaks or something. I don't know if you call them lamb steaks. Well, whatever. Yeah, okay. Anyway, but yeah, it was fun, and what I really liked was actually not at the Sheep Festival, but after we were there on Saturday, one of the girls who I was with, she had been to a farm, I believe it was over Christmas. She had been to an alpaca farm in the area that she had just somehow got in contact with the farmers there. And so she called them again and asked if we could come by and see the alpacas. So we got to spend half an hour, 45 minutes or so at this alpaca farm. There was maybe 15 or so female alpacas, including, well, with the females was also the new baby alpaca, whose name was Alphonse, and he was just so cute and had such a personality. So there was about 15 or so female alpacas, and then we didn't go near the male alpacas at all, but I think there was maybe 10 to 15 of those as well. But the farmer was just so funny with his alpacas. He just picked up the baby alpaca, just like scooped him up in his arms and was holding him, and then he sat down on the ground and just had him in his lap like a dog or a cat or something, and the alpaca just totally calm, had his face like right up next to the farmer's face, and they were just So cute. And we got to, he like pulled apart the wool on the back of one of the alpacas, one of the older alpacas, and we could see just like, I mean, they're covered with dirt and poop and hay and all sorts of stuff, but you pull that back, and he just like pulled back the fleece, and underneath was just this pure kind of sandy colored wool. I don't know if you call it wool. That's an interesting question. Excuse me. But just a beautiful coat that was so soft and so warm. And it was freezing when we were at this farm. So you just touched this alpaca wool, and it was like, oh, yes, now I can understand why alpaca sweaters are so warm. Because this was just, it was amazing. So back to the sheep festival, though. I did find some yarn there. There was a lot of pre-made things, more like art. Like, there was a lot of felted things, which I always think is a little bit interesting. I guess there's all sorts of people who go to these festivals, but to me, I'm not that attracted to felted knitting, or a lot of needle felting as well, which I think is interesting, but there was like huge sculptures that were needle felted, which were interesting to see, but it was kind of, like, I don't know if they sold any of them, because it seemed to me that many people were there for yarn or maybe the meat as well. I don't know how many people were actually there to purchase art. So that was kind of interesting. There was also a lot of pre-made things, so socks that were knitted on sock machines and things like that. No, there was like hardly any needles, which I was hoping maybe to get a new pair of needles. No needles that I saw. And not all that much yarn, but I really wanted to find some local Swedish wool, and I did. So this is a skein, I'll hold it back here, this is a better color. This is a skein of Gotland, it's a mixture of Gotland and fine wool. I don't know what sheep that is, I need to look it up a little bit more, because I saw that a lot this weekend, but it's fin ull garn, or fin ull garn, I think, which means fine wool yarn. But I think it might be from a particular breed of sheep, because Gotland is a particular sheep from Gotland, the island near Sweden. This is a 2-ply DK weight, approximately. It's 220 meters, which I think is about a DK. And this is from the Solkustens Spinnverkstad, which means like the Sun Coasts, I think this is what it means, the Sun Coasts Spinning Workshop. And I went on their website a little bit. They have a nice website with lots of nice images and things like that where you can purchase their yarn. And that's linked in the show notes if you're interested in checking it out. But this is a pretty sturdy wool, I guess, rustic. Gotland is a long wool sheep. So it's not the softest thing, but I heard from, it's still nice and soft though. Pretty soft. It's just a little bit more rustic, and it feels like it still has a bit of lanolin in it. But one of the girls who I was with had knit with this before, and she said it was lovely, especially after it was washed. So I am definitely looking forward to knitting this. I'm planning on knitting a pair of mittens, and I'm not sure what pattern yet, but possibly another pair of the Grayling, I think it's Grayling mittens by Tin Can Knits from their Pacific knit, no. The one that was in, it's like the road trip one. Road trip. Okay, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I knit a pair of those before and I really like them and wear them a lot. I like the fit of them. So I might knit those again, or if anybody has any suggestions, I have 220 meters of a DK weight in this lovely melon Garola, which is medium gray. Okay, so another few things that I got at the Wool Festival is I got 6 balls of this yarn, which Tusen du Frieds Engeluld, I don't know, this is Danish. It's a Danish company, and this is 30% baby alpaca and 70% new wool. And so I got 6 skeins of this, 5 different colors. Blue jeans, which is actually a very different blue from, okay, you can kind of tell this is way more kind of teal blue, and this is more crayon blue. I don't know. But this is a really nice color. They call it blue jeans. And I got curry. It's the same. All these are the same 70% wool and 30% baby alpaca. I got off-white. Blasting out. Yeah, you get the point. And dark raspberry. Mint blue, which is a lovely baby mint color. And then another off-white. So, then for the rest of the weekend, all I could think about was all the projects that I could do with these. And, I mean, I think they look great together. I think they would make really nice colorwork project together. One thing that I've been thinking about is the Leftovers cowl by Wendy Johnson, with using like the cream as the main background color, since I have 2 balls of cream, and then mixing these up. But, I mean, I don't know. There's so many different possibilities. These 3 together. These 3 together. Like, cream with any of these. I don't know. So, yeah. So, I'm really looking forward to knitting with those, especially after visiting with the alpacas, because they have some alpaca in them, even if it's from Denmark. And I got that from a little booth called Maya's Manufacture, which is, in Swedish, I'll translate it, but it's the nostalgic handworks boutique. And this is her little card. She has a website, which is in the show notes, and she has a really nice little collection of vintage ribbons, buttons, yarns, all sorts of cute little things with sort of a vintage 50s and like shabby chic sort of style. So I would definitely check her out. She was at the festival and just a really lovely person to talk with, and she was interested, of course, in what I was going to make with all these colors that I put together. She's like, you have to make something with them all together. And I'm like, yeah, but I've also been thinking about all the colorwork, like little colorwork projects, colorwork mittens, all sorts of things. So I really like yellow, off-white, and gray together. This is a leftover gray from my Little Hearts cardigan. And I've been eyeing the Doris mittens, which is a pattern by Clara Falk. And it's a pattern that's only available in Swedish, but I am probably going to get it later today. And I'm imagining that if you have any experience knitting colorwork mittens, because it's charted, you will be able to understand the pattern even though it's only in Swedish, because the whole mitten will be charted, so, you know, and then otherwise it's just numbers probably like cast on. You could probably Google Translate that and figure it out. So I'll let you know if it seems readable for someone who doesn't speak Swedish, because even though I sort of understand Swedish mostly, my speaking Swedish is not so great. But anyway, I still know what it's like to not understand Swedish, so I think I'll have a good idea of whether or not a non-Swedish speaker would be able to understand the pattern. Anyway, so all in all, it was a good weekend, and I am excited to try out that new yarn. So while I was in the car and at the festival, I was working on my Fish Lips Kiss socks, which is a pattern by the Sock Therapist, and I am knitting these socks. You've seen them before. Here's the first one all finished. These are out of fondant fibers, superwash merino, and nylon, I think, in the Riff Raff colorway. And as you saw, the first one is done. I'm almost done with the second one. I have a couple more rows to do before I start the toe. And I thought I would just show you on this one, since I finished the toe, how pointy that toe is. Especially if you remember the socks that I knit for Thomas for Valentine's Day. His socks, maybe I would have gone to here or something, and then Kitchenered the top part into a pretty square toe, because that's how his toes are. My toes are really pointy. I don't know. This fits me perfectly. So it just kind of, I don't know, goes to show how different people's feet are, and how if you knit your own socks, then you can make the perfect fitting ones for you. So these have the Fish Lips Kiss heel. I really do like this pattern. It just fits really well for me. So I did go through and do all of the measuring with the cardboard, and I think it was worth it in the end. But I also never tried it without doing the measuring, so I don't know. With the measuring, it does work. I don't know if it works well without the measuring. We'll just say that. My other thing that I'm working on this week is the Clara dress. And I've talked about this before as well. I'm not sure who the pattern author technically is. It's based off of a traditional Norwegian pattern. And this is a little dress. Here is the skirt of the dress. And I really like how it's coming out. I have switched to a smaller needle for the waistband here. There's a little seed stitch waistband, and then it will grow into the bodice. I just switched to a smaller needle for that part because I want it to kind of cinch in a little bit more, and then I will switch to the larger needle for the top part again, I think, so that it will match the bottom. But yeah, I'm knitting that out of the Yaku 416. This is 100% superwash merino wool, and the information about that is in the show notes. It's also the same yarn that I used for my Little Hearts cardigan and for that pattern. I haven't seen the baby yet, but she was born and everything is all good with her. I have been sick, so I have been staying away, but I hope that by the end of this week I'm all better and she is accepting visitors. So then I'm not too worried about her growing out of that yet because she's really tiny. But yes. So I have two finished objects this week. One is with me here, and that is the Canopy shawl. And this is a pattern by Melody of Bee Mandarins. And I've talked about this before. You've seen it in progress. But you can notice that I used a different edging. Different color for the edging. It's the same edging that she has in the pattern, but I used a different yarn. And that is because I ran out of the yarn that I was using, which is from the Knitted Wit in her Tuffy sock, I think. Victory sock, that's it. Victory sock in the Gret colorway, which I really liked knitting with. It was a fingering weight, and the pattern calls for a sport weight. And it was less yardage than, the skein I had less yardage than what the pattern required in sport weight. So, I mean, I was like pretty sure that I was going to run out. And I found a little leftover bit of this Lorna's laces in her shepherd sock multi in the Bean colorway, which I don't really know why it's called the Bean, if that's a reference to something or what. But it really goes perfectly, I think, with this other yarn that I had, because it's mostly like a cream with a little bit of pink and a little bit of light gray. And because it's just like such a subtle variation, and also because the main shawl has like subtle variations within it, I think it just goes really well. And I think it gives it like a little bit of an antique-y lace feel. I'm reaching over here because I was going to grab this, where maybe this sock, which you can hopefully see the colorway a little bit better. Maybe. Nope. Yes. Okay, so this sock is from the Vintage Sock, Knitting Vintage Socks, I think it's called. Maybe. Can't remember. I only have one of them, and I really like this sock. It's really pretty, I think. But I borrowed that book from the library, and I knit the first sock, and then I renewed the book as many times as I could, and I just hadn't started the second one yet. And I could have made a copy of the pattern or something, but I just didn't. I wasn't sure if I was going to knit the second one. So now I have one sock, and I have no more yarn left to finish the other one, because I used it for this edging, and I also used it for a pair of wrist warmers that I made a coworker once. But that's okay, because it's really nice yarn, and I can just rip this sock out and reuse it for something else. But I thought I'd just show you this anyway because I have it. What else was I going to tell you about this? I don't know. I like reusing yarn if I can, and using up all of it if I can. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So just for anyone else who might be interested in knitting this shawl in fingering weight, for the edging I used 19 grams. And I only had 17 grams of the main color that I used, so really glad that I decided to switch. And why I decided to switch was I started with this grayish purple color, and I knit like 2 points or something, because you go like knitting, because you're knitting the edge on, so you start on one end and then like, anyway. So I made like 2 points, and I weighed how much 2 points was, and I just knew that I wasn't going to have enough. It was going to be really close anyway. But one thing that I would recommend if you are getting close to the end of the skein and it's time to start the applied edge, what I did was I just ran a lifeline through the end of the main body before I started the edging. And that way I knew that if I needed to rip back, I could easily, and it would not be a problem at all. And I hardly ever use lifelines, and this was just so easy to do. It was so helpful, and I'm really glad that I had it, and it just made knitting it nicer, because it was like, okay, I could rip back if I need to, and I won't have to pick up all the stitches again. So I have the Haya Haya Sharp interchangeable needles, and they have a little hole on the end of the needle where you can slip in a thread or a string of yarn, and that's an easy way to use put a lifeline in. I think it's easier to use a thicker yarn, like a fingering or a DK weight yarn, rather than a piece of dental floss, which I know a lot of people do, because then your stitches actually have something that they're holding on to a little bit more that's a similar size to the yarn that you're using. And the way that I did that with such a tiny hole is I took one of those little metal needle threaders, like for a sewing needle. Those little ones that are like this tall, and they have a little metal loop on the end, and then it's like a little rounded metal thing with like a some guy's head or something on it. I'm not sure. But I just used that to push through the hole, put my thicker yarn, and then pull it back through the hole in order to add that lifeline, and that worked really well. So I would recommend that if you are needing to put in a lifeline and you want to try it with a little thicker yarn to make it easier to pick up the stitches if you need. So my other finished object this week was a little bird of happiness that I made for the mom of the knitter whose house we stayed in Karlstad when we were at the sheep festival in Chile. So I just thought I would bring her a little something. I knit her a bird of happiness out of this yarn, which is Malabrigo sock in the Impressionist Sky colorway, which is the same yarn that I used for my Alicia Beth cardigan that I was wearing, I think it was last week. I held this yarn double for the Blue Bird of Happiness, and it turned out really cute. I'll put a picture in right here so you can see it. And I just stuffed it with some polyfill and a little bit of lavender and put a little string on it. And she really liked it, so that was fun. So, upcoming this week, I talked already about the Doris mittens by Clara Falk that I'm really excited to knit. And the reason why I'm really excited to knit these is because one of the other knitters who I was with in the car and at the festival this week, she had those mittens that she had knit out of a really bright turquoise and a light gray, and they just looked really cute. So I'm definitely going to cast those on. I think I'm going to try to finish up my Fish Lips Kiss. Why is that so hard? Fish Lips Kiss heel socks first, and then I will probably cast those on. But the other thing that is upcoming this week is I'm going to be casting on a fingering weight version of my new hat pattern that's coming out. So this is my hat, which I am calling the Sodermalm hat. And this hat will be available on Ravelry for purchase on probably March 7th, which is this Saturday. I just am working up some last things, and this one is knitted in worsted weight, so this will definitely be available in worsted weight, and then we'll see if I am able to make the additions for the fingering weight size and pattern before then, but if not, it will be available as an addition, like a free addition to the pattern, that will just be like an update to the pattern. So I'm really liking how these are coming out, and I'm excited to release that pattern soon. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, one thing I was thinking about was how to get rid of pills on sweaters or other knitted things that you make. And I don't have one of those little electronic pill shavers. But what I do have, and I've always been like a little bit worried about them. I don't know. I'm guessing that they work well because I think a lot of people use them. But I'm always a little bit scared because it just seems risky or something. I don't know. Maybe they work well. But what I have is this little wool comb, which is from Klippen, which is a Latvian company who makes blankets. And Thomas and I got a blanket from my parents for Christmas. My dad was visiting in November, and we got it then. And it came with this little wool comb to use to brush the blanket with, to remove any pills that you had. So today I was looking at this sweater, and you know, under here, under the arms a little bit, it gets a little pilly. You can see it still is a little bit pilly. But, like, pills happen. It's just a fact with knitting with softer, finer wools. Pills happen. So I decided to give this a try. And I decided to try it on this sweater first because this sweater is, I said, out of the Quinson Company Lark, which is a similar wool structure as Cascade 220, but this is an all-American wool, and it's a little bit different, but it's a little bit similar in that it's a pretty sturdy wool, and it has a lot of plies, and so I thought that it would be a good one to try this wool comb, which has like a rough kind of like pumicey stone feeling here. So basically I just went like this on my sweater. It's kind of a bad noise, but it gets rid of the pills. They come right here. Nothing happens to it. Looks great. And I feel like I have a little more control over this than the wool shavers, even though I've never tried a wool shaver, so maybe those work fine. But I don't know if you can buy these anywhere. I bet you can. But yeah, I think it's important to take care of your sweaters and just make them last for a long time. I don't know that I would use this on my stripes and square and stripes sweater that I knit out of Madeline Tosh, because that's a much more sensitive yarn, and I find even when I'm wearing that, if my nails might have like a tiny little hangnail on them or something like that, I could catch it. So that's a little bit concerning. I've always been able to, like, you know, wiggle it, pull the stitch, and get it back in so far, and I could probably also do that with like crochet hook or something. But I don't think it would be a good idea to use something like this on a sweater with that kind of fine and sensitive wool. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. But I think that's about it for this week. Thank you again so much for watching, and I really like hearing from you guys. So yeah, I look forward to talking to you a bit this week. And keep an eye out for that pattern coming out on Saturday. I think that's it. So until next time, happy knitting. Bye.